this very special edition of Final Score Overtime because, of course, we try to give you a lot of high school football coverage throughout the week on Friday nights with the Final Score, and now wanted to do a little something to give a little extra content. You know, unfortunately, there are time restrictions on the TV that can be a little tough to get to a lot of interesting topics, so we wanted to give you something. We're going to be talking about high school football, college football, a little bit of NFL, go across the gamut. It's also a little bit of Basin gridiron overtime, if I had to say so too.
Yeah.
Going all three levels, and we'll do that a little bit every week. And again, just to give you guys a little extra content and look back on the past week that was, look ahead to some games coming up, and we'll see how it goes. But glad to have you guys here.
Thank you, man.
And ready to get this going.
Happy to be here.
Erin, happy to have you back.
Yes.
welcome
Feeling
back.
rejuvenated.
I want to give everyone a disclaimer really fast. Since I was gone
Yes.
Friday and Saturday, I'm still a little out of the loop. Back home for a wedding, so not exactly able to keep up with Texas high school football. So
Absolutely. But
Gonna do
again,
my best,
as I said on Basin Gridiron, don't worry, it wasn't her wedding. So there we go. But looking back at the first week, or last week of high school football, week 2, we'll start off with our game of the week. Coahoma beating McCamey 40-9. This is our game of the week last week. McCamey had a 34-20 win over Seymour, and then Coahoma had a nice win over Forsan in the Howard County Bowl, a shutout. Coahoma's the bigger school. They return a lot of players. They did have a lot of size. We kind of thought that could be an issue for McCamey and the Badgers, although McCamey does have some talent. But yeah, Coahoma running away with that game, 49 the final, 40-9. And so I had some stats here. McCamey, or Coahoma I should say, 421 yards on the ground against the Badgers. And Jake, of course, our Game of the Week reporter,
Yes.
you were at that game. Coahoma looks to be something else this year.
If Coahoma can play their game and run the ball effectively against teams, they're going to be really hard to stop. Of course, Zach Schneider, the quarterback, he's just going to be a problem for anybody to tackle over.
Is he a quarterback?
Lamar Jackson actually came out this weekend and said not bad for a running back in terms of his passing performances. However, you can win games, especially in high school football, whatever is most effective. And I promise you, him running the ball is very effective.
Absolutely. And as we go through here now, some other games, of course, we'll take a look at our 6A teams. Start off with Odessa High at home against Jefferson County, a 37-14 win for the Broncos. And, I was at this game on Friday night. I was there kind of toward the tail end of the first half. And this was, what stood out to me just watching them. Odessa High, honestly, they probably could have won by more than they did. I understand they were a little sloppy there in the first quarter, but I literally, when I was there, they were up 8-0 with about 5 minutes left in the second quarter before the half, and then they went into the half with, I think, a 30-0 lead. So that just shows
they had
you.
22 points in that second quarter.
Yeah, so they Odessa High, I think it was good for them to kind of get back on track. We were talking a little bit about Dre Cobb.
Yeah.
Dre Cobb, a lot of playmakers that Odessa High is going to have to fill some spots for. I think Dre Cobb's definitely going to be one of those guys. Yvonne Miranda doing well. And, I think it was good to see the Broncos get that win, and certainly something they'll try to take going into this week. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add there.
It's nice to see them bounce back to 1-1.
Absolutely,
especially as district games are
absolutely.
coming up.
Now, Permian and El Paso Franklin, another game at Ratliff Stadium. That was on Thursday. Both of those games, by the way, obviously, a lot of meaning to those games. Odessa High honoring its student, Layla Hernandez, and Permian exchanging the banners with El Paso Franklin before the game, just kind of bigger than football there. That was certainly a nice moment. El Paso Franklin getting the win over Permian, 49-28.
You went to that game.
Yes, this was another game I was at. It seemed like Easton Hernandez was a little banged up, did not play at quarterback for Permian, worth noting. But 5 returning starters for Permian, as we've mentioned. I think this is going to be a team that, more so than others with all that turnover, is going to take a little bit of time to really – I think they'll improve during the season more than most teams because of that. But El Paso Franklin, look, they're a good team. They were a good team last year. They gave some of our teams some trouble, and they still have a lot of playmakers back. And they were able to move the ball a little bit and gave Permian a little bit of trouble. But I think I think Permian it'll be a work in progress.
Yeah, I talked to Ellison yesterday, and he said he didn't think it was necessarily a step back from their loss in week 1, but they definitely didn't improve like they'd wanted to. But said they'd address those things, and they'll take care of them this week. But
and I've been talking a lot about teams running the ball. I believe they had an all-state running back coming back. So
yes,
that's always going to be tough sledding for anybody you're playing.
Absolutely. Now, probably the most exciting game, Midland High beating El Paso Pebble Hills. Midland High 43-42. They scored a touchdown with, I think it was 46 seconds left. George Springer running it in and then going for 2 and getting the dub there. I don't know. I think this was a much-needed win for Midland High. A tough loss at Randall last week, but I'm sure this will be big for their spirit this week.
Especially going for 2 to end the game, that shows your coach really believes in your team, not going out for the tie, you're playing for the win.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a big momentum builder going through the season.
First game at home too, right?
Yes, because they were at Randall last week. So that was certainly a good win. They improved to 1-1. Midland Lee going to 2-0 on the road, 35-21 over Abilene High. I mean, Midland Lee, we've talked about it, but that's a team with not a lot of obvious weaknesses.
Yeah. Not surprised by that one. Mikey Serrano playing very well. 5 touchdowns for him.
Clinton Hartman had mentioned how last year they played well. They won on the road against Smithson Valley, and then they came home. They lost to Abilene High. So I think just also a good mental boost for them to kind of take care of business this week. Lee is ranked number 24 in the latest statewide rankings. I believe that is from Dave Campbell's Texas Football. So it's a team that some people are taking notice of. Some people had taken notice of, but yeah, they are they're moving in the right direction.
It seems like a very well-balanced offense too. Last week, a lot of ground and pound, and this week, Serrano 300 through the air, 491 total yards for that offense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a high-octane football team.
Absolutely. Andrews and Monahans. Andrews 44-6 win over Monahans. Now, Andrews, I believe week 1 lost at Lubbock Cooper, but that is a very good 5A team up in the hub city. 44-6 over the Lobos. Lobos, I think, still another team, new head coach. They lost at Clint week 1. That's not a terrible team. They have some playmakers there. And Andrews, of course, giving the Lobos a lot of trouble. I think this says more about the Mustangs and especially that offense with Brett Leach back at the helm. I think you can't overstate the importance of that.
Yeah, I think I expected Andrews to win that game. I guess just not by that margin of victory, I suppose, because the Monahans-Andrews game is always really exciting. And I don't think either team drastically changed a whole lot from last season to this season, too. It was a lot closer last year. It was our game of the week in week 2. But, yeah, I don't think you can underestimate those playmakers that Andrews has. Brett Leach threw 4 touchdowns and only 1 interception on Friday. And
I think Monahans, too, similar to Permian, is going to be a team that improves a lot as the year goes along. Greenwood, another team we've been keeping our eye on throughout the year. Big win over Hereford, 35-14. This is a team that really gave it to Greenwood last year. And nice to see, if you're a Greenwood fan, the Rangers go up to Amarillo area and take down the hostile herd up there.
Yeah, they've been a fun team to watch, but once again, they bring back all of those offensive components that you like to talk about so much, Vin.
I know.
All of those guys.
And Weston Wilbur, 4 touchdown passes.
Yes.
I think he was really, I don't want to say the question for this team going into it, but he's really kind of the one piece that we saw him play a little bit last year, who is going to see a significant bump up in his playing time, and I think so far has answered the bell.
Yeah, so for those of you who may not know, Weston Wilbur's stepping up this year, first time as starting quarterback, took over for Jake Summers after he graduated last season. Did get some playing time last year whenever Summers was hurt.
At the very beginning of the year,
It's been very impressive the way that he stepped up these first
And one
games.
of those games he started last year was that Hereford game, so a big improvement for him, big improvement for Greenwood. And then some other games, Stanton, an 8-2 loss to Wink. Wink, getting into the win column 1-1. This is a team that Wink, they lost to a tough Sundown team, and then they get a win over Stanton. Stanton is a little bit of a bigger classification. But Wink, defensive struggle. I think Wink, I'm surprised they haven't maybe gotten going as quickly because they do have a lot of starters back, and I think that's the biggest thing early in the year. It's when you do have all those returners. But good to see them get a win. Obviously, the defense played well. Stanton, I think Stanton's still a much improved team from last year. And I think this is a pretty solid showing for both sides, especially that Wink defense.
I just know Wink's going to have a tough game next week.
Yes, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. Now taking a look at Pecos and Kermit. This was also another emotional game. Pecos, its first home game since Jonathan Aguilar and Ethan Medina, two quarterback and wide receiver that would have been their senior year this year. They honored them by taking the field with 9 players for that first play. And then, we're kind of held a moment for them. And then on the field, 38-26 win over Kermit. And, a little back and forth game. And I think it was nice to see the Pecos. I believe they got shut out week 1 against Denver City. It was nice to see their offense get rolling because I do think they have some playmakers on that side of the ball. And then we'll go Fort Stockton against Alpine. This was a 21-6 win for Fort Stockton against the Fightin' Bucks. Just taking a look at some overall stats from that game. 168 yards on the ground for Fort Stockton, and really giving the Fightin' Bucks a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Just 40 yards passing for the Bucks, 10 yards running on 28 carries. Fort Stockton, they had a nice. I think they lost to Lubbock Estacado in the playoffs, a very good team last year, and still a very good team this year. But they did have a good record last year, Fort Stockton, and I think they'll once again be giving a lot of teams some trouble this year.
And I'm not surprised by those statistics at all because head coach Mike Peters always says they're a run team. So that's their main offensive power right there, I guess. So they've got a couple of really good running backs. So not at all surprised by what they did on the ground this week.
Absolutely. And the last game we're going to take a look at, Seminole, a 22-21 win over Idalou. And I haven't been able to see exactly how this game went down, if there was some crazy 2-point conversion at the end. But listen, Idalou is a smaller team, but still a very tough team on the road, tough environment. Idalou did get a big win over Shallow Water in their first game. Shallow Water, a very good team last year and probably again this year. So I think nice to see Seminole get the win here and improve to 2-0. Excited to see what the Indians can do this year.
I know. They've been a fun team to catch up with, so we'll see.
At least one Seminole team's taking care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. Florida State, it's been a little bit of a trouble. And that is going to do it for this first recap. And when we come back, we're going to take a look real quick at some of the games coming up in Week 3 for high school football. Stay with us. When you got a big job, you need a reliable work truck. From flatbeds, roustabouts, and crane bodies, you can all find it at Stanley Ford in Andrews. Their fleet sales crew can get you in the right truck for the right job, and no one has more in stock than Stanley Ford in Andrews.
Welcome back to your Final Score Overtime edition. We're here bringing you bonus high school football coverage. We are now going to go into the previews of next week. We're going to start with our first game of Odessa High taking on Coronado of Lubbock. And what are your initial thoughts?
This is a juicy one. Coronado is a team that they had a little trouble with. I mean, it's kind of the same story with every team that Odessa High over the recent years. They had a little bit of trouble early on in the Cervantes era. When the team was having trouble, they turned the tide a little bit, started to see some success against the Mustangs. Mustangs are 0-2, but those 2 losses are some very good losses. To Lubbock Estacado, that was a big upset week 1 in the Lubbock area, and then Lubbock Cooper, 2 of the better Lubbock teams. So Coronado, Sawyer Robinson, we were talking before the season when the ESPN released its junior top recruit rankings. He was the number 94 overall recruit in the nation.
Casual.
As a junior. Yeah. So he's their quarterback. He's still, obviously, he's a big playmaker. Odessa High, I think, they're still a bigger school, so, they should hopefully have some numbers and stuff on their side. That'll be a very interesting game on Thursday, though.
Yeah, and they're coming off a confidence boost from last week, getting that win at home, so they can take that on the road. But it is a Thursday game.
Yes,
right?
a Thursday game.
Thursday night.
Less time to practice. So.
Absolutely, true.
Moving on to our next game, we'll be having 0-2 Permian going to number 8, 2-0 South Lake Carroll.
I believe that game's actually going to be at home.
Oh, excuse me.
No, you're okay. We have it mixed up here.
It is at home.
But yes, South Lake Carroll, very good team. They were on the road for this game last year. It's interesting. Permian, even though they're 0-2, we talked about Franklin. I think that team is one of the better El Paso teams, and I do think El Paso. This is not just your typical, El Paso, teams from here always run over El Paso teams. El Paso has been getting a lot better, so I think we've got to give them a little bit of their due. But, they did hang in there with DeSoto week 1, played even with them that second half. They were only down 28-7 at the half, which, they had that big turnover where they fumbled it, and DeSoto took it in for that touchdown that week 1. So I think Permian, while 0-2, and they're going to have obviously some troubles this week, South Lake Carroll, very good team. I don't think I think it's too early to totally write off Mojo just in general.
Yeah, I think a lot of their scoring deficit too comes from that inexperience. Those players kind of beating themselves, off their own errors. But you got to give South Lake Carroll their credit.
Absolutely.
Good on offense and defense. Allison was just saying their offense gets a lot of compliments. Everyone's always really big to compliment that, but they have a lot of seniors returning on the defensive side of the ball too. So it's going to be tough.
Yes.
Luckily, it's at home for Permian.
Yes.
We'll see if the Mojo can ground the boys from the Metropolitan. Next game will be Midland High taking on El Paso Franklin.
Yeah, and again, El Paso Franklin, very good team. This is the team that was last year. I think they lost to them at home, and then they went on the road for that playoff game where I can't remember what the score of that playoff game was, but it was like 60s, 50s. It was. I want to see if I can look that up. But yeah, this is it'll be an interesting team. I think that offense will give Midland High a little bit of trouble, similar to last year. And the Bulldogs, though, El Paso Pebble Hills was a tough team for them last year and got the win at home this year. I think this will be a really telling game for Midland High. I think we'll figure out a lot about them with this matchup.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, moving on. Next will be number 24 now, new state ranking, Midland Lee against El Paso Montwood.
Yeah, Montwood, again, one of the better teams. I don't know, though. Lee at home, the Rams, good luck. Good luck to the Rams. I think Midland Lee, is, especially early on this year, we talked so much about continuity being such a big part of a team early in the season, especially. And I think Midland Lee is out on a mission this year. That's just the sense I get too from talking to Coach Hartman, and you can tell there's a lot of belief in that locker room.
This game's at home?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think Midland Lee's really going to have a problem with this one.
Yeah, 42-6 win over the Rams last year as well. So,
according to Coach Hartman, the Rebs are back, baby.
The Rebs are back, baby.
Next game, we'll hopefully have a team get their first win as long as there's not a tie. We have 0-2 Big Spring taking on 0-2 Monahans.
I'm going to talk about those NFL overtime rules, but yeah, this will be an interesting game. I think Monahans will probably start. I think they had 12 points in their opening loss to Clint, 6 points against Andrews. I think. I don't want to go out on a limb, take a winner here, but I think Monahans will start to hopefully get that offense going if you're a Lobo fan. And then Big Spring, 2 losses, but to a very good Greenwood team, and then to Sweetwater, which Sweetwater's kind of a confusing team. They state runners-up, or I believe maybe even state champions a few years ago, and then they were just really down last year. So, 48-27 loss last week for Big Spring to Sweetwater. I don't know what to really make of the Steers so far this year. I think there's probably reasons for optimism, though, when they're just given the quality of their opponents.
Yeah, I think both of these teams are still getting comfortable, too, with one another.
Absolutely.
Both of them have new head coaches.
Absolutely.
So I think it's probably good to work out these kinks early on.
Yeah.
It
is non-district experiment with some stuff a little bit, too.
Hopefully one of them, though, gets, one in the one column
Hope so.
We'll see.
All right. Next game, we'll have Seminole, who just coming off a 1-point victory last week, inviting Pecos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Seminole, and this will be at Pecos. I think it'll be interesting because, Seminole, they got the win against Idalou, good team, although also a smaller team up in Lubbock on the road once again. And Pecos, just like we mentioned with that game against Kermit, did get that offense rolling a little bit. I think they found a little bit of their mojo offensively, and at home, I expect the Eagles and the fans to be up for this game, so I think that could be a very good contest.
Who was it? Do y'all know who Seminole played in week 1?
Seminole,
that first
week 1, I believe I can look at that, but
either way, I agree with you, Ben. I think it's good for Pecos that they get to take this game at home again, coming off that big victory last week, kind of getting more comfortable with their offense. Talked to Coach earlier in the year, said that they were trying to make their money off that O-line. So it looks like things are starting to click.
Seminole had that big win, 57-7 over Lubbock High. That's what that was. Yes, I know. That one had slipped past my radar.
Yes. We'll see.
Next game is Leveland and Andrews. What are your guys' thoughts on that one?
Leveland.
Yeah, Leveland. I know we got to break them in here, but no.
I'm still new.
Leveland, normally very good offense, although they, for the first time in what feels like 12 years, they do not have a Gerber at quarterback this year. Nick Gerber now up at West Texas A&M. Chris Gerber, the quarterback from last year. So honestly, I don't know too much about Leveland this year.
Yeah.
At Andrews, I think obviously that'll be helpful for the Mustangs. I would expect, just knowing traditionally, at least recently, how both these teams like to play, I would expect a lot of points on the board, especially for the Mustangs. And that probably could be a very fun game to go to as a fan.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't know a whole lot about Leveland and how they're looking this season, but I know Andrews lost to a good Cooper team in week 1, kind of got their groove back last week against Monahans, and they get this game at home, so I think it's promising for the Mustangs.
Leveland, a win over Plainview and a loss to Shallowater. Shallowater, pretty good team. Plainview, above Leveland's weight class, as we like to say. So, I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Our next game, we have 1-1 McCamey taking on Ben's favorite team in the Basin, the Cranes.
Well, we don't have any favorites here, Jake, as you know, but one of my...
Just going to let Ben take this one.
It's certainly a team that I think Crane, I think they are similarly on a mission because they've had a really good year last year in terms of record, but only got the win over Oklahoma in the playoffs and then lost after that. And I think they, for a lot of sports, because basketball was kind of similar too, but just obviously there's a lot of crossover there. I think Crane is a team that is used to winning a lot of games, but is this year set to prove that we're not just a regular season team, we're going to be a good postseason team. And and they only 6 points that they've given up all year, and they had that thumping win over Ira.
Merciless on offense.
I know. McCamey, listen, they're bringing in a lot of new players. It's on the road. This is another school, a bigger school for them. I think it'll be tough for the Badgers, but I do, similar to what we were saying going into the game last week with Oklahoma, I do think they have some playmakers. I do think by the end of the year they will probably find their groove once some of those more younger kids start to get established. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say McCamey's a really young team, too.
Yeah.
They have a lot of underclassmen that are taking on some big roles this year. So it's been an adjustment in terms of experience for the Badgers this season, which I think is promising in years to come. Just might be a bit of a building year this year.
Yes, only 3 seniors coming back for the Badgers. Next game is going to be Wink and Coahoma.
Yes, and this is going to be an interesting game because Wink, they had a lot of I think they had 18 returning starters. They had a lot, I don't know what the exact number was, but they had a lot of returners, both starters and just overall players, and going to be on the road at Coahoma. And we know that Coahoma looks pretty well balanced, a pretty good defense. I think they play off each other with how well they are on offense, their physicality, their line, and then defensively, a very tough team as well. I think for a lot of the same reasons, that physicality, that size. So I think their size, Coahoma size, could give Wink some trouble. But Wink has some playmakers. We talked about before the year, Nicholas Gray back at quarterback, probably one of the better returning quarterbacks for all the teams in the Basin. They do have an offense that can get clicking. Just the 8 points last week against Stanton. But I think Wink, as I said earlier, is going to be a team that here shortly will really start to kind of get it going.
And I know Jake's a big fan of that Coahoma offense.
Yes.
Yes.
I love watching big boy Stack Schneider running the ball.
Yeah, he's pretty tough this year. Yeah, Coahoma 78-9 against their opponents this year.
Yeah.
Combined.
Again, I wasn't here Friday, so this is kind of impressive to me.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for that.
Oh, I know. Oh, man.
Okay, our next game is Shallowater and number 9 Greenwood.
Yes, Greenwood getting some love in the Dave Campbell Texas football statewide poll. I think this is another revenge game. It is another revenge game for Greenwood. I believe that loss to Shallowater was a really lopsided loss last year, if I recall, up in shallow water.
I remember being surprised by it. I remember last season thinking that Greenwood wasn't as good as they are because of how they started out the year.
Yes.
So I think a lot of these first games of the season this year are going to be those kind of chip on their shoulder, revenge kind of games.
Yeah,
so.
it was that last year was 55-24 shallow water.
Yeah.
So I think Greenwood is going to probably come out on a mission to similar how they did with Hereford to try to get it going.
And it's at home.
Yeah, they got that vibe going.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to some six-man. How about
Here we go.
Buena Vista and Rankin?
Rankin, a big win over Klondike. I think Klondike is one of, if not the team to watch next year because they're only going to lose one senior this year, and they're still probably going to be a very good team this year. That said, Rankin scored 70 points on them this past week, and if there's one thing I think we know about that Rankin offense is that they might lose a game here or there, but they're going to score a lot of points. And I expect them to try to do that again this year. Buena Vista, at least early on in six-man when I was out there, or early on in 2 days when I was out there, only had 8 kids on the roster. So, they pride themselves on their toughness and their resiliency, and I think they do a good job considering that circumstance. I think that might be a bit of a struggle for them in terms of trying to keep up with the pace of Rankin. I'm sure Rankin's going to try to exploit that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't really know a whole lot about either of those teams. So.
Yeah. Buena Vista, big win over West Texas Homeschool that week one.
Yes.
A loss last week, but yes, Rankin averaging 62.5 points so far.
Our next game will be Midland Christian taking on number 5 Wall.
Yes, and this is a game that Midland Christian won last year. I think, they lost by 7 at home to El Paso Americas this past week. Midland Christian did.
I think it's worth noting that Americas is a big school.
6A, and a fairly large 6A, if I'm not mistaken, too. So this will be a smaller school. It's always interesting. These Midland Christian matchups against the UIL schools, it's always interesting because we don't have that kind of great idea of
comparison of where they fall.
Exactly. So, I think it at the very least could be a very good game. Wall did have that big statewide televised win over, I believe, Mason in that week 1 matchup for them. But Midland Christian, I think they definitely have some pieces to work with. They were really impressive that week 1. Mm-hmm. And then, losing at home to a very big 6A team, as you mentioned, Erin, I don't think anything to be too ashamed of. So I think they'll have a chance in this one.
Yeah, 2 teams that are pretty even, I think. Just going to be tough on the road.
Yeah.
And we will wrap up the high school previews with our game of the week coming up. It'll be number 5 Garden City taking on number 9 Balmorea.
Yes, and this is going to be a top 10 matchup.
I'm so excited.
Quarterfinal rematch, the Jones show on both sides.
At the Jones show and the Bears show.
Absolutely, and Vance Jones, obviously 2 state finalist appearances the last 2 years, or not the last 2 years, not last year, but the 2 years prior, but did also have some state championship pedigree at Garden City way back in the day. This goes deep on a lot of levels. It's going to be at Balmorea, as you mentioned. I think, it's going to be a team. I think Garden City is coming off the state semifinal appearance last year, where they certainly lost a lot of talent from that senior class, but they still certainly bring back a lot. And Balmorea is kind of like the opposite, to where they were still a very good team last year, and they return a
lot of players.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of like 2 teams that maybe are kind of catching up to each other. I don't want to say I think it'll be a little more competitive than the quarterfinal matchup from last year, but who has the upper hand in this? I genuinely have no idea.
Yeah, I know Garden City has a lot of returners coming back, but Balmorea, again, lost that postseason game. A lot of those players remember that. They get to play this game at home, and I don't know. I'm excited for it. 2 Coach Joneses, Bearcats and the Bears. You just can't write it any better than that.
Yeah, and then
2-0, both of them 2-0.
Yeah, Balmorea averaging, I believe, was it 58 points per game, and then 53 points per game for Garden City. So, I think these are 2 very, very evenly matched teams.
2 ranked teams. Did we say that? Ranked
yes. Teams? Yeah. Top 10. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sounds like it's going to be a shootout between these 2 top 10 teams. Now, coming up.
He's going to be covering.
I will be covering this game.
There we go.
It is our game of the week on Big 2. Check it out Friday night and on Final Score.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Coming up, we're going to graduate from high school to college.
Let's
we're going to go break down some of the games from this past weekend, including a salty orange fan on this desk, as well as some previews coming up for next week's games.
When you got a big job, you need a reliable work truck. From flatbeds, roustabouts, and crane bodies, you can all find it at Stanley Ford in Andrews. Their fleet sales crew can get you in the right truck for the right job, and no one has more in stock than Stanley Ford in Andrews.
Welcome back to the Final Score Overtime Edition. It is now time to talk some college football.
Let's go.
All right, we're gonna
the Basin Gridiron portion of the show.
Let's go in that C block.
We're gonna break down some of the games from last weekend. We found a little extra interesting. We're gonna start a little salt in the wound here. Ben, talk to me about your Orange taking on Maryland. I'd like to get your
We were
thoughts
gonna
on this.
play Clemson. We were gonna have game day if we just didn't lose to Maryland. But don't worry, Maryland's not that good, right? But apparently they are.
Yeah, you and I were talking about it, and all you were worried about was that Clemson A&M game. You're like, all they had to do is take care of business, and game day is coming.
I was telling our other friend Jake that I basically, though, I've rationalized it. I flipped in my mind the Maryland game with at Florida State. As at Florida State, I thought, we could lose that game, could be tough, but, we have a chance. At Maryland, we'll probably win. I guess we might lose, but, we'll do that. Now I just flipped it to where we'll probably beat Florida State. I mean, come on. They almost lost to Monroe. You can't be doing that, dog.
Florida State's not looking
I'm not
too
buying
good this
the
year.
Florida State high. Every year the past few years. Come on.
Okay, we're going to go to the biggest game of the week, which actually was game day. LSU and Texas in Austin this year. You guys want to give me your thoughts on that game?
Fun side note on that. You might have seen the We Want Maryland sign out at the game day rally. That was my sister and her crew out supporting the Longhorns, and so she texted me about it as this was going on, of course, and I texted her back, no, you don't want Maryland because they're the real deal. They have an actual quarterback. But, no, I mean, I don't know. This was an interesting game. Joe Burrow's at the end coming up clutch. I think LSU, they had a lot of swag going into this game, and I think you could tell they kind of wanted to make a statement. People kind of underestimating them this year. But, yeah, I mean, well, Texas, not a bad loss, obviously, but.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
I mean, LSU now jumping to number 4, into the playoff picture as of right now. It's it's never a bad loss losing to one of those teams.
Absolutely.
Our next game will go to A&M taking on Clemson.
Yeah, this was something that I thought, we talked about last year, that game with A&M and Clemson, and, for all the Gig'em fans out there, I still thought, even though they came within 2, it felt the whole time like A&M was just fighting to get to that 2-point conversion. And then even if you did that, I think if you're a Clemson fan, you still feel pretty good. Like, one play, our defense with that front 4 against A&M, I like our chances. And that's, pretty much what happened there. It is what happened there. Yeah. And so, going to Death Valley, I think it would have been, hopeful to see something, an upset if you're an Aggie fan. But, yeah, I mean, Clemson, I'm surprised. I think they actually did hold Clemson more than I thought. I thought the defense played better than I was expecting.
Yeah.
The biggest takeaway I had from that game was that touchdown pass that Trevor Lawrence had rolling to his left, that beautiful touch pass into the end zone. It reminded me of Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers as a Bears fan. That's pretty scary.
For all the wrong reasons.
All right, our last game that we will wrap up, Texas Tech and UTEP, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of one of those games that, the most exciting part of it, if you're a Texas Tech fan, is it really wasn't an exciting game, not much to talk about, which...
The final?
38-3?
3.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, if you're Texas Tech, that's exactly what you want. You don't want to get, too cute with these games. Just take care of business.
Alan Bowman kind of looking,
Yeah, let's see. 30 for 45, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, maybe could be a little better. Jed Duffy 1 for 1, 4 yards. So, I mean, that's a good game there. But McLean Bandix, former Midland High Bulldog, 2 catches, 18 yards. But, yeah, I think so far so good in the Matt Wells era.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to preview some games. Our first game will be Texas and Rice. That will be at NRG Stadium.
Rice is going to probably get worked this week. I think. I think.
Tell them how you feel.
Revenge game. I mean, it is in Houston, but I think the Longhorns take care of this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are favored by 31.5 points so far. As that game gets closer, we'll see if that line moves even more. Next game will be A&M and Lamar.
Well, another similar game. Yep, trying to rebound. And A&M normally, they do smack these FCS schools, especially in College Station. So I think, once again, Lamar.
The verbs.
Cardinals. Apologies if we have any Cardinal fans, not St. Louis, but if we have any Cardinal fans listening. But yeah, I think Aggies will take care of business there.
Texas Tech will travel to Tucson and take on Arizona.
I think it'll be Tech's first real challenge.
Yes.
You know, they've had these 2 games at home.
Taking on Kevin
on their
someone.
first,
Oh
yeah.
man, this would have been such a fun game if Cliff Kingsbury was still here, taking on his old head coach.
Yeah.
As the head coach, but Khalil Tate. You know, I think this will really be the first time, speaking of Khalil Tate, that defense is going to be tested. And we really, you know, try to learn something meaningful from that side of the ball. I think offensively they'll still be able to put up some points. Arizona has struggled with that a little bit, but yeah, I'm excited to see that game.
Yeah.
Arizona with a Week 1 loss to Hawaii. That was surprising.
Yes,
to
down
me.
to the wire. That was crazy.
It kind of reminded me of the Mike Winchell run, you know, being
Yeah,
tackled on the
yeah.
1 as time expires.
Absolutely.
All right, our next game will be TCU at Purdue. TCU giving 1.5 points in that game.
Yeah, I think Purdue is always one of these teams that I feel like they have a good head coach, and because they do every year, it's like, is Purdue really back this year? And they're not. They're not back this year. They lost Week 1 against
They're
Nevada. They beat Vanderbilt. Cool,
Okay,
but
but
like,
Vandy.
I'm gonna believe it when I see it with Purdue. TCU. I think TCU, after being down a little bit for the past few years, they're going to try to come up. I'd probably expect them to win this game. It is on the road, but even if Purdue wins this game, I don't know what that tells you about Purdue. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
Next game will be the Ponies of SMU against Texas State.
Okay, here we go.
Your Ponies of SMU. Here we
My
go.
Ponies of
Let's
SMU.
Let's hear it.
Okay, my biggest takeaway.
Texas State lost to Wyoming happens to the best of us. Am I
It
right?
does. There you go. Now, making that quality loss look for Mizzou right there.
But SMU 2-0 for the first time since 1984. I don't know a time, at least since I've been there, that there's been more excitement around the football program. Shane Buechele, I call him Propane Shane. This dude is electrifying,
There you go.
absolutely. Speaking of electrifying, though, I have to give a shout out to the athletic department who thought of taking the turnover chain idea, raising the bar a little bit. SMU, the School of Dallas, now has turnover bottle service on their sidelines.
Oh, I'm not sure that's allowed.
I don't know if it is, but
What does that entail?
I'm
so,
curious.
I mean, I saw a video of it on Twitter. You know, you run to the sideline and they have a bottle. You know, they bring it out for you on the platter. I don't think it's a real bottle.
For the players.
I cannot confirm.
Well,
yes,
I hope not.
It is on the sideline, and when you pop it, it shoots confetti, and
they-
you know you get turned.
Oh.
Okay, I was gonna say,
Okay.
did
No,
they
What
I-
else is in
no,
the bottle?
did they ID you on the sideline?
But it's so
Oh, man.
perfect though for
Yeah,
SMU.
yeah.
It's you hate it and you love it at the same time if you're a student. Next game will be Houston against number 20 Washington State.
Oof.
Oh, this is going to be in Houston. Oof, as our good friend Feliz Romero would say. Yeah, I Washington State, you know, they're looking pretty good, even though they lost Gardner Minshew. Shout out to the new Jacksonville Jaguars starting quarterback. But I don't know. I don't know too much about how good they're. I mean, they are ranked. I'm not sure how their offense will be. Washington State, just once we kind of really sort things out. Houston, bringing the Red Bull with Holgerson. Yeah, I don't know. I think this could be an interesting game. I wouldn't be, let's see, Washington State 8-point favorites or so. I wouldn't be super surprised if Houston can maybe pick this game off.
And I think this atmosphere needs to be noted too. It's in Houston on
Yeah.
Friday night. Like,
Yes.
That's pretty exciting for Houston
True,
fans
true.
too. But
And hopefully those students can show up in full effect.
yeah.
I will
Absolutely.
say I'll be checking Twitter all week for any kind of Mike Leach life support.
Man,
Yes.
On
he's
Twitter.
he's been retweeting stuff about cats recently, Mike Leach. Yeah,
What a guy.
homeboy is. All the coaches listening, if you're watching or listening, learn something from Mike Leach's Twitter account. It's pretty fun.
Somebody get this man a pen and paper and jot down his thoughts.
Yeah,
Next,
yeah.
we're going to move on to the NFL from previews and breaking down the the Week 1 games as well.
When you got a big job, you need a reliable work truck. From flatbeds, roustabouts, and crane bodies, you can all find it at Stanley Ford in Andrews. Their fleet sales crew can get you in the right truck for the right job, and no one has more in stock than Stanley Ford in Andrews.
And talking some NFL football now. Erin Reynolds, unfortunately, our sports reporter, had to leave on sports reporting duties. But we are back to talk about the NFL, and we'll start with the Cowboys. Big 35-17 win over the Giants last week. Dak Prescott, my goodness. Yep. I mean, how about the guy?
Incredibly. For a guy who's trying to get paid, that you could not do much better.
And Amari Cooper playing well.
Yes. Another guy trying to get paid.
That was one of those games where, almost from I saw this. I had a friend who, I didn't play him in fantasy, but he had Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram, and they both had really good games. This was a similar game for the Cowboys to where almost everyone involved. It can't work that beautifully every time, but almost everyone had a good game for themselves, especially offensively with Dak going off. Amari getting some touches, even Jason Witten, but the Zink's still getting in the end zone. So, that's about, I think, as much as you could ask. I think the Giants this year, 17 points, but I think it's going to be a rough year with the Daniel Jones, Eli experience there.
I wonder how long before New York starts clamoring for Daniel Jones.
Yeah. Fumbled on the first play of the first series where he fumbled against the Cowboys. Cowboys are going to be at Washington this week, taking on the Redskins. Redskins they were pretty heavy underdogs against the Eagles, although they were leading that game for a long time, but then eventually did fall out of favor.
Shout out to Trey Quinn, former Mustang, Mr. Irrelevant of last year. He had a touchdown in Week 1.
There it is. And this game is going to be in Washington, for what that's worth. I don't expect the Cowboys to have any problem with this game.
I would not either. I will say the thing that you talked a lot about Dak Prescott. I got to give some love to Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. The thing that he did specifically to make the game so much easier for Dak, on over 2/3 of their offensive snaps, -2 kneel downs, he actually either had a motion or shift in those play calls to help Dak Prescott realize, is it zone coverage, is it man coverage, and really throw off that defense.
Yeah, I think that's always obviously been a big point of conversation this offseason. That new offensive coordinator, new scheme. Are they going to open it up a little bit more? I'd say it looks like I don't say the jury's in, but so far so good from that standpoint.
No Monday overreactions.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Then going to the Texans.
Yes.
My goodness. Houston. Did you see the end of this game? I was watching this live.
I watched this game through and through, and that was, compared to what we saw Thursday night with our Chicago Bears taking on the Green Bay Packers, it was night and day in terms of the quality of football.
Well, just how about that final minute?
Yeah. That was a roller coaster.
Yeah, and if you missed it, final minute, Saints go up. I actually thought Kamara, I think it was, he got that first down right after the 2-minute warning. I almost thought, in the back of my mind, if I was a Saints fan, go down 2nd and 1, just to I know you don't want to get too cute, but get the first down if you can. But they kick the field goal, go up by 6 with 50 seconds left. 2 plays later, 13 seconds later, 38 seconds left, they're in the end zone, touchdown. They tie the game. Extra point, no good. The kicker gives them an extra chance.
He missed it, by the way.
Yes, and he missed it. Gives them an extra chance. They get it, but nonetheless, they still go down. And then was it 57, 58-yarder from Will Lutz to win the game for New Orleans?
Right down. It was probably good from 60.
Yeah, that was something else.
He hit the All-State's good hands from 58 yards.
This week, now this is another sore subject for me because this week they're going to be home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags with my guy Dougie Marrone. I think my guy's in a little bit of trouble with the Jaguars. Listen, I know Patrick Mahomes looked really good for the Chiefs against the Jags in that defense last week. Obviously, they still have a very good offense, but no Tyreek Hill, and they still put 40 points on them. Jags, I think, are I think their best part's obviously their defense, but they keep committing all these personal fouls all over the place. You can't.
Miles Jack got kicked out of the game for punching about 4 people.
I know. And then he got really
He got a
mad
4-year extension in the offseason.
I know.
How are you going to
I will say, quick side note, I thought the Chiefs, they made it work anyway, but they kind of got, robbed on. Some of these offsetting penalties, on that sequence in particular, I was amused by because, if you, get in a fight and then, 4 people punch the other players, but, one of your players shoves back, there's 4 personal fouls to 1, and it's totally offsetting. We just replay the down. Yeah. I would think we could do something to aggregated a little bit, or like two of them offset, and then like you still did like, because I think literally on that play they had like 3 personal fouls, and then the Chiefs had 1 from one of their guys shoving back, and that just made it 3rd down again, which seemed a little not totally right. But Texans in this game with the Jags, I mean, they are going to be at home. 9-point favored, so that's about as big of a favorite as you can get.
And we use the word revenge game a lot, talking about these high school games. Jacksonville has to be upset, especially with their defensive performance, letting Patrick Mahomes hang 40 on them. I
was going to say, I still think Texans. I still obviously think probably or should be favored to win this game. If anything, I think the Jags with that defense is maybe going to cause some problems. I could see them, getting 3-4 takeaways, playing angry, as you mentioned.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson had, an incredible game, an incredible end to the game. In the first quarter, he went flying over that pylon. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes,
incredibly acrobatic play. And then looking down the barrel of the gun, taking a huge hit before that touchdown strike with just under a minute left in the game. I mean, can we give Deshaun Watson a win and give the Saints a win?
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice.
I just want everybody.
That felt the shame. We hate to see it out here. But, okay, then our final score overtime final thoughts, at least for me. Cliff Kingsbury, NFL debut, a miraculous comeback to tie the game at 24. They go to overtime, and then they end in a tie. And I hate these NFL overtime rules, these new rules where I don't mind the, chance to answer. I don't love going from 15 to 10 minutes, but couple them together, and we see ties all over the place.
Yeah,
and sure. I can't remember how many ties we had last year. I'm going to look it up real quick, but I think there were like 3 or 4 ties last year because of all this. Yeah. And it's just like each team gets a possession, and if both teams kick a field goal, if the team that gets the ball the 3rd time doesn't score, it's almost guaranteed going to be a tie.
Yeah. And you and I were talking about this, like how do you evaluate, imagine if a team would get 2 ties, and we're talking about playoff seedings versus a team who has a win and a loss. How do we break that down? Is a loss better than 2 ties, or is 2 ties better than that 1 loss?
Yeah, I don't know.
These are questions we need answered.
I say there were a lot of ties last year. I think there was only just 2 ties last year. But, yeah, point remains.
2 is a lot.
I know, but 2 is a lot. Usually a tie happened like every once in a blue moon, not much less. I feel like you can count on it now. I don't like the rule. And then even college football, they're doing this thing starting the 5th overtime, because it's already been the thing that if you score a touchdown, you have to go for 2 starting with the 3rd overtime. But then once you get to the 5th overtime, thank you Texas A&M and LSU, they're just going to start going for 2. Like that's all they're going to do. They're not even going to have the normal possession from the 25. They're just going to line up for 2 over and over and over again until someone wins. I just let them play, man. Let them play.
Let them play the game.
I don't know.
Stop trying to change the game.
I know it's player safety, and I know it's like preserving players. That's the intent of it. But I don't think the players like this. I would be surprised if the players are on board with all this.
Somebody should ask them about what they think, especially. Yeah. My final thoughts going in to next week, we'll bring it back to Texans-Jacksonville. Actually, the first time ever in 105 career games that J.J. Watt did not record a tackle, let alone a QB hit.
Man, he really didn't.
No, and I will tell you, Nick Foles going down, of course, with that broken clavicle. I'm looking for him to have a huge bounce-back game going into week 2.
Gardner Minshew coming in. Look out, man. I don't know. Jags, do they have to – I guess they stick with Gardner Minshew. I don't know what else they can do.
I think they just traded for Josh Dobbs.
Okay.
Oh, so,
I don't know if that's going to save your problems. Yeah. But, I guess not bad to have a little bit of depth there.
Yeah,
but,
get some options.
Yeah. So, I don't know. That should be interesting. Patrick Mahomes, I don't even know who the Chiefs play, but I'm just going to say 350 yards, 4 touchdowns. I agree with you. That team is rolling. That is going to do it for our first edition of Final Score Overtime. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll be back here next week again to break down all the high school football from the previous week, look ahead, same with college, same with NFL. And that will do it for now. Jake, pleasure having you on, bud.
Thank you, Ben.
There we go.
Great doing my first show.
And on behalf of Jake and Erin Reynolds, Ben Peck here, I want to thank you for watching and listening. And we will see you next week once again, and tune in this week from the Final Score as we do once again our game of the week for high school football. Balmaray, Garden City. Let's go.
6, man.